A very good morning to you. My name is David Batsoffen, and if you don't know by now, I host a travel blog called Travel and Things. And at the moment, I'm doing a series called In Conversation With, and my guest today in conversation is Alan Committie, all the way from Cape Town. Alan, good morning. How are you doing?
Reporting to you live from the very heart of Turkey, here in the very crotch of the southern suburbs, Western Cape. But I'm happy to say, for the moment, virus-free, and thrilled to be chatting to you, David Batsoffen. Look at that beard. Look at that beard since last I saw you. My goodness, this is a pleasure. This is tremendous.
As somebody said to me the other day, I'm Rabbi Batman.
Yes, I like it. You look a bit like, have you seen David Letterman's beard? You're about a third of the way there now. It's very good.
You see, I had the same size beard as Letterman. And my wife said to me, you look very woolly. And then off she went to bed. So I thought, all right, I will surprise her. And I took my wall and my beard trimmers and I cut it down quite considerably. And she woke up in the morning and went, what the hell did you do last night?
She liked woolly.
Yeah, she liked woolly. What can I say?
Who doesn't like woolly?
Yeah, I have to say, David Letterman looks positively biblical.
He really does. It's listen. He's one of my favorite. He was one of my favorite late night hosts, and certainly one of my favorite kind of interviewers. And it's kind of given him a sage and a wisdom that, I always kind of accredit to him anyway. But now he feels positively mentor-like. It's extraordinary.
So why are you still clean shaven? What is with you?
So I've had days of good beard. I just can't get to the itchy phase, if you'll forgive the phrase. As you know it's about 2 weeks into the beard, and then you've got about a month of itchy before it really establishes itself, and then you've got a really great beard. And to be fair, we haven't seen each other in person for a while, but in fact, all of last year, I had a very big beard because it came off the back of November of the previous year, where I was playing in Oleana and then into Richard III. So I had a beard for a lot of last year. So I'm quite enjoying not having one for the moment.
With that, nice segue into where is the
award?
Thank
you, sir.
Where is the award?
It hasn't arrived yet, actually. They sent a mail on Monday saying they will deliver at some point. So let's see. But very thrilled to
it's wonderful. You got for Best Actor, if I remember correctly, for the first Fleur Cups.
Yeah.
Many years ago, I played for my sins in Tights and a Tunic, the personal page to Richard III.
Really? Fantastic.
And I tried to find the photograph to send to you. Jim Shorrock, a well-known Port Elizabeth actor, played Richard, and he would pick the evening of a school's performance with collegiate girls' schools filling the front part of the theatre to be late for his entrance, and left me standing in tights and a tunic, center stage, with nothing to say. And it was okay in the beginning, but you know what it's like when somebody's late for an entrance. It may have only been seconds. It felt like hours. And then the girls started laughing. And I'm not Sir John Gielgud, who can ad-lib in Shakespearean. So when you won there, I thought, brings back memories, and I've started therapy again.
Good man, good man. Yeah, listen, we had a company. It was an extraordinary experience in the sense that I think you and I have spoken about this, but it was my first ever one-man show 20-odd years ago. I did a one-man Richard III when I was 22 years old. And I played an actor who played all the characters in Richard. That was a lot of fun to do, but it was also in the back of my mind, I knew no one was going to cast me as Richard, certainly not at that age. And so it was an opportunity to, in between all the comedy silliness, actually play the text as seriously and as well as I could play it at that time, which I'm sure wasn't particularly well. But how lovely then to come full circle, 20 odd years later, and to get an opportunity to play it at this extraordinary kind of iconic venue, Maynardville, which is an open air space in Cape Town. And, it's 78 years of Shakespeare's. And so to be able to do it, and we had a cast of 12, but to talk to your point, there is that scene in Act 5, the beginning of Act 5, where they find themselves on the battlefield, and he's Batman and his kind of assistant are standing. And there is a moment while Richmond is kind of proclaiming and talking loquaciously across the stage, where we just have to stand with our backs to the audience and point randomly at maps. And, you know, well, you can only imagine the kind of conversations. Every night, I would give them more and more interesting information around what was on that map in an attempt to see if I could coax them, because the two of them had to face the audience. I, of course, got to face upstage, so it didn't matter what I was doing. It was fantastic. It really was.
Are you writing the addendum to Michael Green's The Art of Course Acting then?
Ah, sir, isn't that a great book? And I got to tell you, funny that you should mention that, 2 days ago, I found it on Audible with him reading his own book. So I've downloaded it, and it's going to be one of my pleasures to listen to in the next coming days. I'm very excited, because that was something that we all loved and read kind of voraciously, I think at various times in our career, just to remind us how hammy we can be and still are.
Well, this is it. How to dive properly on stage.
Exactly. Making appropriate groans and falling behind furniture.
Exactly. But Alan, I don't know if people know you as a serious actor. They know you as a stand-up comedian.
I think that's changing a little bit. Listen, when I was younger, so I studied at UCT as an actor, first and foremost. And then at the end of that 3-4 year degree, a combination of a BA and a performance diploma, I then, true to my word to my folks, to have a backup career, if you will, I then did an HDE. I did a teacher's diploma so that I could also qualify as a high school teacher. And so that was what I was armed with as I went into the industry. And so for the first 4 to 6 years, I did part-time high school teaching at a number of schools, and slowly started building. Well, at that point, I wouldn't have told you that it was a brand. I wasn't aware of that. But I slowly started, enjoying some acting projects. But because I had fallen behind my kind of classmates, and in my year were fantastic actors like Terence Bridget and David Isaacs and Robin Scott. They all went straight into the industry and, immediately started making some waves. I kind of was 18 months after that, I finally arrived, and then just didn't get any work initially. And in a weird way, that was serendipitous, because it just compelled me, as I then did, to sit down in the computer room at Westerford High School, which is where I was teaching, and to go, okay, well, the next step is I've got to create something for myself, because nobody else is. And out of that was born this one-man Richard III. And I took that to Grahamstown. I remember it cost me 4,200 Rand for the entire trip up and all the accommodation. And I mean, can you dream of that amount now? But of that, and then I made 5,200 Rand. I made 1,000 Rand profit. I was like, well, that's all right. And then I took that home, and I took that 5,200 Rand and set up a run at Artscape Arena. And then I made another 1,000 Rand. And slowly, it just kind of fell into my lap to just do. Don't wait, just do. Yeah. Well, I mean, the end of that long story is that I've done 23 one-man shows and probably 8 to 10 other scripted shows that, with, 1 or 2 other actors over the years. And then that has given me the opportunity to do what I call indulgences, which is effectively to go to those big, actual, proper straight theatre productions that don't necessarily make money or are certainly a higher risk, and to do those in my own time and when I feel like I'm ready to do them. And so over the years, I've done A Noises Off. I've done Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, which is an amazing Tom Stoppard. We just finished The Producers, Mel Brooks's Producers. It was cut short by this lockdown. I know. And we're hoping to bring it to Joburg. Yeah, look, the plans are very much in place to bring it to Joburg early in 2021. So I'm hoping we'll still have that 8 weeks.
2020 something, Alan.
20, just 20, in the 20s. In the 20s, exactly.
But now, I just want to take you back a step to your high school career. Now, there's a very tall British comedian, which you're not, called Greg Davies, no. who was a school teacher and who dips often into his school career for comedy moments. Have you accessed those, or have you sort of stayed away from that and worked around other issues?
For years I didn't. I mean, I always used to talk, certainly in reference to being a teacher, and it's kind of fed my style. For those who've watched my shows, I love a little lecture demonstration. I love a flip chart. I certainly love an organogram, and those have all.
You have taken Venn diagrams to the next level, Alan.
Exactly. And those kind of come from a teacher, although, of course, I never really used those in my teaching style. But certainly the stories around staff rooms and other teachers and learners, I explored that in my second to last show, which was called Classy Clown. And it was fun to kind of revisit. And certainly in Cape Town, which is where I did almost all of my teaching, I've only done some consulting teaching up in Joburg. But in Cape Town, it was lovely because I would often see ex-colleagues, teaching colleagues, or I would suddenly, the headmaster of Bishops appeared once and I said, I hear you've been talking about me. I said, why wouldn't I? So the word got out, and those were great. My sense is Greg Davies was a slightly naughtier teacher than I was. I loved I loved the teaching. I really did enjoy it. There's a lot of stuff around education and curriculum forming that I have no interest in, and certainly provides a lot of stress for those who are still in education.
Right.
But the actual interaction with learners and staff members are truly some of the happiest memories I've had. And really, again, serendipitously, luckily, when I look back, on my career, it was the start of building an audience for two reasons. One, it taught you how to read a room and how to work.
All of a sudden, Alan starts sounding.
And they have a person within seconds of starting a lesson. What size? Is there a person who's got a huge laugh? And it's hello.
No, you went all AI on me, and there's a delay. So I let you speak, and the moment I said Alan's gone all AI, you then stopped because you'd heard me speak.
Aren't you loving technology? It's amazing. So to finish that thought, just that was the one part of it, was forming learning how to read a crowd. But secondly, a lot of those learners from those late 90s and early 2000s are now audience supporters and fans, and they've brought their kids. So again, that wasn't a planned thought, but it was the start of a little core audience that kind of developed, and it was something to work with. And often young comedians will say to me, how do you start in the industry? Well, in a weird way, it's almost impossible to recreate my journey, because it was a series of events that I hadn't planned as carefully as it now looks like I had. I'd have to say to them, go back and become a teacher and do these things, which, I wouldn't encourage too many people to do.
I thought you would say, you've got to learn to say, would you like fries with that? With a big smile on your face.
Big smile on your face. Exactly. Man, it's tough out there. And tough now. Imagine being a young comic in lockdown and having to try and make your way in this digital world, which, has its own challenges, as we know.
Well, we'll get to that momentarily. But you as a teacher, I suppose, are used to tackling a classroom. If you say, I need the answer to, and the kids don't respond, then you will chisel away until somebody goes, yes, sir, I know the answer. And I've watched you on stage on more than one occasion, and you don't want to be sitting anywhere in any of the rows, because you have a horrible habit of not only picking on the front row, you go beyond the front row.
Oh yeah, no, the front rows are the lowest hanging fruit. Now, I like to find you wherever you are in the crowd. And I have been known to go up into the gallery if I need to elicit an answer. That's something I was saying this to someone the other day. It's amazing how I've always loved working with crowds, and no doubt that is part of that teacher-learner relationship of, the interaction is important to me. But when I started out as a comedian, at best I had one follow-up. So you might say, where are you from? And if someone said Bryanston, and I didn't really know about Bryanston, I would go, it'll be lovely when they finish it. So you have a standard gag, and then you exit out of that as quickly as possible. And you wouldn't get a great laugh, because in fact that line doesn't really resonate with Bryanston.
Yeah.
Then you start finding out, Bryanston is kind of Santon minus, but Lone Hill plus. and it sits somewhere between. And so then when somebody says, I'm from Bryanston, the next time you go, oh, but you say it like you want it to be Santon. You're very aspirational. And yet I can hear underlying desperation, lone hill in your voice. So suddenly I can give them, and so the kind of conversation would be layered with my increased knowledge and or curiosity around whatever, whether it was jobs. And so, I mean, what's been interesting about my career is I love talking to people. People always say, oh, don't worry about what I do. It's very boring. Well, for me, it's very interesting because there's going to be something in there that I can file away and hopefully remember or recall or bring up again in a conversation with somebody who's in that industry in years to come in an audience. And so I love all that stuff. I love knowing about places or people or jobs or occupations or events. You know, comedians don't know a lot of, they know a lot of stuff. They know a little stuff about a lot of things.
Yeah.
They don't know a lot of stuff. And that's kind of our job. So we only really have 1 or 2 sentences. People go, oh, I can't believe he knows about that. No, that's all I know about that. Yeah. It's only those 2 sentences. But it's enough.
Our heads are filled with trivia. We can regret facts that are of no
right.
to anybody.
Yeah.
But have you ever come across it? And I was watching, and I can't remember who the comedian. Oh, it was Dara O'Brien. Because you know he
also brilliant.
He always picks on front row, and he asks what people do.
That's right.
And the one person said that they were a marine biologist, and he just stopped, and he went like, "I have nothing for that. Let's just move on."
And then he will the next time. So
well,
those are great moments.
So that is my question to you. Has it ever happened to you, Alan, where you've been on stage, you've picked on somebody in the audience, what do you do? They come up with something, and your filing cabinet all of a sudden is locked, and you can't access anything.
No, that's right. And so that's the point I guess I was making. In the past, that would flummox me, and I'd have to say something like, well, I don't have anything for that, and then exit and move on. And it depends, again, what I'm trying to get out of them. But today, with 20 odd years of experience, what I do now is I go, okay, I'm not scared to just stay here for a bit, and I'm not going to get anything out of that job description, but I will then ask a follow-up. So where did you study? And what made you do that? And what were you like? And somewhere in the next 2 or 3 questions, there's going to be a little nugget that I can mine and start to unpack. And even if I don't get the laugh out of what you do, I will still get a laugh out of our interaction. And so that kind of staying power and, dare I say it, bravery in the moment, it comes with experience. And, you know, and knowing that there is something in that conversation that will reveal itself to be funny. So just stay with it. And obviously I've now also developed, even if it's not for that job, because I don't know about that job yet, I've got a whole host of other lines that I can throw in there just to keep the bubble of laughter, you know, going until we get to the good stuff.
Like your interpretive dance. Where the hell did that come from?
So that came out of drama school. I was taught for 3 years by the brilliant contemporary dancer, now educator, Jay Pather. And at the time, I can't tell you how much I disliked it. But if I had known as a young kid, as a young student, the joys and skills I would have been using years later around the country. Jay, by the way, has now seen that contemporary dance sketch on a number of occasions in various forms, both at corporates and at public performances. And he's always kind of distraught that I have sent up what his whole career, essentially, I've taken down into a 3-minute sketch. And as he says, there's not really much more to what I do. That is really all I do.
And it gives you an excuse to strip down into tights.
I mean, there shouldn't even have to be an excuse to do that. Let's be honest. I now have 3 very different colored full body suits, leotards, and I've always got to hide them quite carefully in my cupboard. Be careful who sees them. But every now and then to pull them out and don them and go in front of an audience, what a pleasure, what a joy to my heart.
Now, I thought I was the master of the tenuous link of the ridiculous segue. But you, sir, I bow to your superior capabilities, because you can take something as ridiculous as a menu and reduce people, myself included, Alan, to peals of laughter, because the majority of the stuff on the English side, if you go back to the old restaurants, on the English side was so pretentious. But if you read it
That's
in
right.
Afrikaans, it's like pap and wors. So
That's exactly.
But in
Well,
English,
I mean, you've hit the nail on the head in terms of why that's funny, because it is all pretentious, and it's one of the kind of comedy hotspots for any comedian is whenever pretension presents itself, it's just fantastic to take the legs out of it, and certainly in Cape Town. But this is true across the country, I suppose. But Cape Town is famous for the tourist season menu that gets hauled out, for the international folk. And you think a week ago this was, the rice just came with the meal. Now it has to accompany the meal. It just feels like something has changed in the last 48 hours, and it's not for me.
Are there areas for you that are no-go as far as stage work is concerned, from a comedic point of view?
Yes and no. No, in the sense that for me, and I say this to comics who are asking that, and even audience members who ask, there's no topics that can't be made funny. There's literally not a single topic out there that can't be made funny if you find the right comedy angle, the right perspective in the right context to the right audience. Now, that's a lot of ifs, a lot of variables that you have to get right. And ultimately, my feeling is that if you get the good solid laugh, then you've succeeded. And if you don't, well, then you might have got halfway or not even. And we get into another interesting discussion, because then you might offend people. But then, of course, as Ricky Gervais has famously said, if you offend someone, all you've done is offend them. It doesn't mean that they're right or wrong. It just means they're offended. And that's an entirely different kind of conversation. But for me personally, I have certain areas that I can mine comically more effectively than others. And so very quickly and early on in my career, I realized political comedy. Everything we do, certainly in this country, but I would suspect around the world, everything we do of life. And it is taken with our own political views and all the kind of political landscape around us. But I try to avoid kind of doing the satirical and politically based stuff, only because this country has a wealth of those brilliant comics doing that, starting of course with the legendary Peter Dirk Ace, but coming down now to Nick Rabb and the Kochs, and so those guys have been doing it, and they kind of focus on that, and it feels to me like that's an area that's well covered. That's not to say I won't on occasion do something that is a satirical jab or a little political. And for me, what happens, and it's kind of placed, sometimes it has an even bigger impact because you just don't see it coming.
Right.
And I would suggest that as I've got to know my audience and they've got to know me over the years, that I've pushed the envelope a little bit. There are certain things, and my audience is a kind of older, white, middle-class audience. It's the theatre-going audience. Obviously, I've built some other groups. I have done for many years the Funny Festival in Cape Town, which is a predominantly Muslim audience. So that's a very different group. And then occasionally when I do it at the clubs or the lineups, I might play to a completely mixed crowd, which is always very exciting. But my core audience in a theatre is that white middle-class audience. And they have a very particular set of standards, attitudes. I'm being quite cautious as I describe the. And so sometimes I'm going, well, I need to push this a little bit. I need to just introduce them to a couple of the concepts that I believe in, but without making it too strong. I'll go back a step and say I'm not the comedian, and many are, who shares a lot of their personal life and talk about their partners and their kids, and they regale stories that are very deeply personal. And I always find that incredibly moving and exciting to watch. I'm more of I was always inspired and loved the kind of old school jokey comedians. For me, a Martin Short, a Steve Martin, a Lee Mack. These were guys who went for gags and created comedy constructions around their material. So what would happen is, if I have a story that happens to me, my partner does this, or my nephew does that, or this happened to me on the way to the bank, I would take that story, but instead of just telling the story, I would then also couch it into something that I think comically is more interesting as a construction. And so it could become a whole big gag or joke bit that almost feels a little bit more removed. But what that does allow me is that, for example, if you and I have a conversation off air and you say something and I go, that's great, would you mind if I use that story? I could appropriate your story and tell it as if it's mine. They don't all have to be my stories. I don't have to wait to experience everything in life. And there are a couple of things in my shows where I've forgotten, like years later, I've gone, oh, that's right, this didn't actually happen to me. This was a story that was my cousin's, actually. But I've told it so many times now, I feel like it's mine.
No, it's yours. The master of the good storytelling, and forget, I want to leave the legendary Robin Williams out of our conversation, but Jonathan Winters.
Oh, superb.
I mean, I have watched, you know, YouTube is a bit like a dictionary. So you'll
Yes.
start off watching, I don't know, The Last Leg, and all of a sudden you're watching Jonathan Winters on the Carson Show from the 50s, and the man
Correct.
is unbelievably funny. Old school funny, but then you realize where Robin Williams, because he was a mentor to Williams.
Big time.
Those old school comedians, him, Rodney Dangerfield, those sort of guys, set the bar very high for people like yourselves who are storytellers and comedians, rather than comedians and then storytellers, because that's the way
Correct.
I see you. I see you as a storyteller with an edge.
Yeah, I suppose the other thing that, because I was trained as an actor, you know, my shows have a theatricality to them, and with that comes that storytelling. In other words, the narrative and the structure. And you know, Chris Weir, who directs a lot of my shows, when we do, people always say, well, what does he do? You know, he's not writing them. I write all the material. But one of the things he does very helpfully for me is we sit and we talk structure, and we always talk about the kind of central trunk and the branches from which all the comedy bits can hang. And at what points do I go and bounce on a branch, and for how long do I bounce on that branch, and when do I come back to the trunk? And how often do I just have to reference the trunk just to remind? So simple things because there's a difference between as you know, there's a difference between doing a 10 or 15 minute set in a lineup or at a comedy club and doing 75 to 90 minutes or longer on your own in front of an audience. And often what you have to help audiences with, and they're not aware of this, is that you hit a key word. So for example, I might start a section by going, one of the frustrating things about a bank is, now the word frustrating helps an audience. It keys into what we're looking for. Oh, we're going to be talking about how banks are frustrating, as opposed to how disappointing. One of the disappointing things about a bank is, one of the exasperating things, one of the sad things about a bank. All those words give you a different comedy entry point into that area. So when I'm doing a 15-minute set, I might not focus on that kind of subtlety or nuance of the words. I just get to the gags as quickly as I can. But when I'm working slightly longer, I want to talk about the frustration of banking, but the irritation of housewife TV shows, and then the sadness or whatever. And so I can give the show a narrative feel and different shades and color over 90 minutes. And that's the kind of stuff someone like Chris will help me with. And it's a very theatrical way of looking at a show. But I think it's one of the reasons why I've developed that particular feel to it.
And it works for you, because I think your audiences, as you say, your demographic is very specific, and they come knowing what to expect. You're not going to be in their face, loud, rude, abusive, abrasive.
Right.
You're not. You're the nice fellow in the tights with a flip chart.
Yeah, completely. And listen, that was a conscious choice quite early on, because as much as I love a good shock comic, and I love a rude comic, and I love a comic who I every time I go to London, if he's playing even vaguely closely, I will go and watch Frankie Boyle, the Scotsman, who was booted off Mock the Week for being so outrageously rude. And I've seen him live probably 15 times, and he makes me laugh like I laugh so hard. But I also know that's not something my audience wants from me.
Yeah.
So my conscious choice was, well, who do I want to play to? I want to play to the family. I want to play to someone who can bring kids from 12 years old and their grandparents of 91 and anyone in between. it doesn't hurt that helps financially, because suddenly I have 10 people come watch a show instead of one, 26-year-old in a club. And listen, I met Billy Crystal years ago in LA. He was doing a book signing, and it was such a lovely, because I'm a huge fan. I was a huge fan of his. As the host of the Oscars, you could argue that he was the best of all time.
He is the only Oscar with him on stage and Jack the Lad in the front row. You couldn't ask for a better evening.
Correct. So he was a huge kind of comedy idol of mine. And when I met him, he signed my book and he said, "What do you do?" I said, "I'm a comedian in South Africa." And he said, "No, you're not." I said, "I am." And we had a 2-minute conversation, and it was so short, but it was so beautiful. And at the end, as I was walking away, he stopped me and he said, "Alan," he said, "yes." He said, "Do you work clean?" I said, "I do." And he said, "Always work clean." And I thought that was such a nice, because he's one of the famous, big name comic stars who, when you see him in certain instances, can be quite foul-mouthed. But when he does his own shows, he doesn't swear. He's not particularly vulgar. And yet he's rude and he's naughty and he's irascible and he's funny. You can be all those things without being the others as well. Not that there's anything wrong with being the others.
True enough. So with Billy Crystal in mind, if I were to ask you the question, if you could open anywhere in the world for any comedian, who would it be and why?
Martin Short. And Martin Short is no longer just a comedian. He's very much a kind of comic performer. But for me, the genius of that man, who has gone from, he started out in the musical Godspell in the late 60s alongside Eugene Levy and all the cast of the Canadian kind of who's who of comedy. And then he moved from musical theater into old school vaudeville sketches, Saturday Night Live very briefly, a movie career, a television career, straight acting. But in between all of that, these incredible comedy characters and a mind that is so quick. This is a man who has a quip for every, you see him, he's a professional stand-up guest, late night guest. So when you need someone who's just going to make stuff funny, you bring Martin Short on and go and look him up, and go and look up his comedy character, Jiminy Glick, who's he's in a huge fat suit and he's kind of like a Barry Ronger, if you will. He's supposedly a film reviewer, and but he rips into his guests in the most satisfying and outrageously funny way. I'm a huge fan of Martin Short's. I would happily open for that man.
Now you talk about his character, and Alan Committie, aside from being Alan Committie, is also a number of characters. And one of my favorites, and I'm hoping that at some stage you're going to resurrect him, and you know where I'm going with this, is our friendly post office supervisor or superintendent. What has happened to him?
So Johan van der Walt is still around, and I suppose more recently, in the last 3 or 4 years, he's only made an appearance in my shows, in my stand-up shows. I give him a kind of 5 to 10 minute slot to eulogize, if you will. He's certainly very good at chatting. He's never short of a word. But at his best, about 10 years ago, I had a TV show. I used to do full-on Johan van der Walt performances, 90-minute shows. And it's a strange thing, and I think I've said this to you before, but I've, in conversation with people like Peter Dirk Ace and Mark Lottering and others who've had these kind of crazy alter egos. So for Peter Dirk, it was obviously Tanya Evita. For Mark, it was Auntie Merle. What happens at some point is your character becomes more famous than you. And it's very hard. It's very hard not to become a little bit jealous of your own creation. And it's almost like he or she then takes on a life of their own, which is very exciting. But I used to get to a point where people would phone me or mail me and want to talk to Johan. And I would say, sure, but it's me. And they wouldn't believe that. They couldn't believe that they were two different people, or rather one person. And so, and then of course, so what happens is you kind of run out of things to say, and which is what happened. So about 5-6 years ago, I took an 18-month to 2-year break of Johan. I just consciously said, I need to just rest him. I have nothing else to say. And in fact, all I was doing was kind of regurgitating things that he, which was fine. Even that audience is kind of loved. But for me, it wasn't particularly satisfying. And then it got to a point where suddenly I found myself 2.5 years later, suddenly going, oh, Johan would have such a great attitude or perspective on this. And so, yeah, and you're right. It's time. I would like to hear what he has to say about COVID-19. And so I think possibly in this next online show I'm going to do, I think it might be time to pull out the big teeth and the snort, put on the wig, don the safari suit, and let's hear what the bastard has to say.
Now, again, you see, nice segue into your online comedy performance. I'm keeping up with you. Don't worry. It's not easy, but I'm trying. You've done, I mean, a few weeks ago, you posted some video clips, which you haven't done for a while. And
yeah,
I know a very good friend of mine, I sent him a link, and now he's a huge fan of yours. A huge fan. He loves your work. And he'd never seen you before. So the question is actually a two-part question, Alan.
Yeah.
One, has that given you a new audience? And then what was it like to do an online performance in your lounge with nobody there, basically?
Yeah. So, all right. So to answer the first part, the posting of the comedy clips, and I'll start doing that again. So part of that strategy was to kind of create a teaser leading up to the show. And so for 2 or 3 weeks, and we're now 3 weeks away from the new show. So I'll start again from probably later this week, but early next week, posting some comedy clips again. And it's been lovely well, two things have happened. One is that, yes, there's obviously some more audience, but also because everyone has had so much more time in level 5 and 4. So there was a lot more viewing of stuff on the social media. And you're right. It was lovely to kind of see new people with nice new comments. I also posted a COVID-19 video, which I kind of just did on a whim early on in lockdown. And it's one, I haven't gone viral, as the kids might say, but this was extraordinary to watch.
COVID-19 viral? I don't think so, Alan.
Hey!
And
suddenly we had like over 80,000 views across the platforms, and without putting a sponsored post out or anything like that. So that was really nice, and it certainly did reach some people who had not seen or didn't know of me. So that's the one part, and that has been fun. Doing the show from home, I mean, I've done a couple of things now. Rob Furen has done a couple of comedy shows, which I've been part of, and in fact, I'm doing something for the Savannah Virtual Comedy Bar, which I think goes out in the next couple of days. And those are very much shot at home. But so my show, I kind of watched all of this and thought, well, I'm going to wait until I just feel like we're close to studios. And luckily, studios have now opened up, as you know, which, as long as they're COVID friendly and kind of adhere to all the stipulations. And a little studio opened up in Cape Town. And it was an Aki who runs Eastern Acoustics, a great sound guy, has got a couple of cameras, and it gave me an opportunity just to take it to another level where you're not sitting with this camera relationship, which is lovely for an interaction like this, where we're really just kind of talking to each other. But really, when you want to play, I've just found a lot of this relationship with an audience in terms of comedy is quite sedentary, and it doesn't really kind of take us into performance mode. And so for that show, I was lucky enough that I could play to 2 cameras. But it is still weird because there's nothing. You're just playing to the lens. I mean, so my TV experience has helped me in that. It's not like we haven't done that, for example, even with Laugh Out Loud, where you were floor manager with some of those shows. You're not really playing to, I think on one of the seasons we had live audience and the other we didn't. So I've had experience in both, but it is weird. And what you have to rely on is just the memory of this has been funny in the past. People have laughed. I've got to assume they're laughing at home.
There's a wonderful panel show, the British panel show that I watch called The Last Leg, hosted by an Australian, and has Josh Widdicombe and Alex Brooker. And
that's right.
At the moment, I'm just trying to think of the host's name. It's escaped me, but he's in Australia.
That's right.
And the other 2 are in London. And he's got on his phone, and I've tried it, it doesn't work. He battles every week with it. He's got applause and he's got laughter. And it doesn't work because you've got to find the microphone, and it's still not the same. It's not the same as,
no, it's not.
Because you to use a comedic expression, you riff off your audience. If you see them laughing, it's part of what gives you that momentum to keep the show going, rather than just saying, I've been Alan, you've been an audience, thanks for your cash, cheers.
Right. And so, I mean, it isn't ideal. It's certainly not first prize. And the other thing is with connectivity issues and all the risk that we take when, you know, so many shows break down halfway, or even in this conversation, sometimes there's a kind of, you know, glitch for a couple of seconds. That's the nature of working not only in South Africa, but around the world with, you know, technology, and also with the kind of restrictions. We're not sitting in studios with 3 producers and somebody who can do all of that stuff. We're trying to do the entertainment and work the microphone and make sure that we're in the right. So it is tricky, A. And B, it's never going to recreate that live experience, because even if you comment in the, you know, comment section underneath the show, I can only throw one response back to you. I can't then wait for you to respond because there's so much lag. It takes 30 seconds to hear from you, if in fact you're still there. So it doesn't serve that comedy experience. So what I started saying to my audience is, don't forget about that. We're not doing live comedy. What we're doing is creating a comedy community of a connection where we know we can just laugh with each other. We're laughing at the material. We're hopefully laughing at some of the stuff I'm doing. And this is a placeholder for now until we can return to whatever the new normal will be. But there will be a new normal, and there will be an opportunity where I'll be in front of you. I might be in a mask. You might be in a dental bath. Who knows what the situation will be, but we will have fun again, you know, in something akin to what we used to.
I have to relate to you a story of the late Rex Garner. We did a fabulous, one of my early productions here called Birds of Paradise, which was a forerunner of nudity in South Africa, because there was lots of semi-naked women running around with tassels. And they took it to Pretoria to play at some theatre. I think it was at the Showgrounds. Now, being British, right, they're now in Pretoria, which is predominantly Afrikaans speaking. So Rex would crack a joke. There'd be deathly silence at the punchline, and then you would hear, and then a burst of laughter. And what was happening, we found out afterwards, is they were translating from English into Afrikaans, and that was the lag. It killed. Rex was so angry. But there was nothing he could do. And he learned very quickly, and I'm sure you will as well, and other comedians who utilize these platforms, to work in that pause.
Yeah.
So you give the punchline, you wait for them to translate, they laugh, and then you move on. And it's like the pause never happened.
Absolutely. And already I think you watch a lot of the shows, everyone's learning very quickly. We're all trying to adapt. It's also about working with this medium and going, as I often do in my stage shows, and again, that happened early on. It happened in my very first Richard III performance at Grahamstown, where the way I was set up was the entrance to the auditorium, you had to go across the stage. You know, as often those little strange venues in Grahamstown are set up like that. And so 10 minutes into my show, a very nervous Alan trying to keep it together, a group of 6 people walked right across my stage to take their place. And in an attempt to keep the show going, I kind of spoke to them and realized at the end of that performance, that was the biggest laugh in the show, was the interaction with the audience. And I kind of thought, oh, that's quite nice. So I immediately the next day said to the front of house people, I don't mind latecomers. You can in fact, if anything, keep them for 10 or 15 minutes and send them in. And that was the birth, if you will, of my kind of, you know, relationship with the audience. So you learn very quickly what works for you and what doesn't. But I also think that, so that worked in terms of a live thing. What works here, you know, use the screen, don't pretend it's not television or a visual medium, and that it isn't, you know, there's a disconnect, but we can make that disconnect work for us still. So I think people are going to adapt very quickly, as you suggest, and we'll all get better at it.
And most people end up doing this, looking for buttons to how do I mute my sound? Alan, it's been an absolute joy talking to you. It really and truly has. If people want to find out when your next online performance is going to be, how do they find you and how do they book tickets?
So normally, we'll be using Quicket. That's the booking system. So it's QUICKET.com, Quicket. But otherwise, you can find me on all the social medias. I'm at Alan Committie on Facebook and Instagram, Twitter. Or you can find my website, alancommittie.com. And I have a mailer list. On the homepage, you just put in your email. I don't spam. I only send out a mailer once every 5 to 6 weeks saying what's coming up. And of course, these days is not much. So I will certainly notify you of the new show. But yeah, and then on all the social medias, you'll hear it. And we might even do some radio stuff. So, but the aim is to do it around the 26th of June, 26th or 27th of June.
Great
so in 3 or 4 weeks' time. Yeah.
Alan, thank you so much for being in
Always a
conversation
pleasure,
with.
David.
You take care, stay safe, stay healthy. My guest on In Conversation with today, the inimitable Alan Committie.